This is Parahan, and you are listening to The Parahan Show. When it comes to the alien abduction phenomenon, the number one thing that I hear amongst alien abductees is that they often experience missing time. The other thing that's quite interesting to me is that all these witnesses, experiencers, say that this isn't the first time, their main encounter isn't the first time that they actually have encountered these beings, these extraterrestrials. They say that, through their life, they've experienced these things. And since they've been young, that throughout their whole life, they've had encounters with these extraterrestrial beings. And, when I first heard of the alien abduction phenomenon, I thought that this was ridiculous. I thought it was crazy. And I thought it really hindered what we was trying to do with UFO research, because I had a hard time believing people were being taken aboard a spacecraft. And there are people out there that were, suffering from mental illness or crazy. But when I started to hear real witnesses' accounts and stories, and these people were very credible and very concerned by this, I actually started to believe that something was happening to these people. Now, my first alien abduction case that I investigated, which was many years ago, this man approached me named Matthew, and he told me a story. Now, Matthew lived in a small town called Elburn, which is on the outskirts of the suburbs of Chicago. And he worked in a city in Chicago called Elgin. And he worked at this warehouse. And late one night, after he got off his job working second shift, he proceeded to head home to his small town of Elburn, which took him down a series of very small back roads. And he said, this drive sometimes was very hard at night because you could go a long time without seeing another vehicle. And so he would listen to his favorite radio station as he would make this drive home, which would usually take about 45, 50 minutes. Now, as he was driving home that night, he was listening to his radio station when he started to pick up interference with the station, and all this static started coming in. So he proceeded to change the channel. Same thing on the channel he changed it to. And every single channel was getting some weird interference and static, and you couldn't listen to the channel. And that's when he said, as he was touching the knob on the radio, he seen the hair on his arms start to stand straight up, and it felt like all this static electricity was all over him and in the car. And that's when he started to hear this loud mechanical hum. And it started off softly, very faint, and then it proceeded to get louder and louder to the point where he said it was almost unbearable. He thought about pulling over to the side of the road. And as he's driving, over the top of him, this dish-shaped object moves right over the top of his car and goes in front of him. And he said he blinked, and the next thing he knew, he was at home in his bed, and it felt like he had just woke up, and it was morning time. And he said he couldn't remember driving home from the factory, and he was kind of concerned about if anything had happened along the way. And he almost wrote it off as a dream until he went out to his car that morning. And as he touched his car, he received a static shock, and he noticed there was a lot of static electricity, moving through his vehicle. And he got in his car, he tried to start it, it wouldn't start. So later that day, he had it towed to a mechanic who checked it out and then called him and said, "Hey, did you encounter, a lightning storm or something? Because all the electrical components in the vehicle are completely fried, as if a very large amount of electricity went through the vehicle." And the mechanic was kind of confused because he hadn't seen anything quite like it. And that's when he knew something happened. And he proceeded to say that he began having these nightmares over a course of several weeks where he would see this scene that happened from that night where this craft would come over the top of his vehicle. His car would pull over to the side of the road, and three beings would come out of this vehicle. And he said the only thing he could remember were these big, bulbous black eyes. And they would come and take him aboard this craft, and that was the end of the dream. And he said, what's strange about that is it made me recall a childhood memory where I used to see these same exact beings in my room, but I thought that they were ghosts, and I thought I was seeing ghosts as a kid. And I used to see them in my room, and they would appear in my room and, touch my head and touch my face and move around my bed. And that's all I could remember, and I thought I was experiencing ghosts or something like that. And what's interesting is that this is a reoccurring theme through alien abduction encounters, where these people have these experiences throughout their life, and at first they think it's something else. A lot of them think that they are apparitions of ghosts or spirits. So I've started to speculate from that. What is the possibility that ghosts may indeed or may be essentially extraterrestrials? And hear me out, as crazy as that sounds. Could these extraterrestrials be appearing to us as something that we would understand to some extent? A deceased spirit, right? Of someone that once lived in that home or once lived, right? And maybe perhaps they have the ability to take that form because that person is no longer here on this earth, and that they can assume that identity to kind of make us feel more comfortable, but to sort of confuse us about what is happening and what is going on. And what's interesting is what you see with these, when people experience alien abduction, they often don't remember the what these beings or these extraterrestrials look like. We do have some accounts of the grays and whatnot, but a lot of times they say that when they try and think about these beings, an image pops in their head of an animal, most commonly an owl, or just a specific place or a specific image. And so I've often wondered, if extraterrestrials were coming here and they were abducting people, would they try and disguise themselves and hide what is happening by familiarizing our minds with something that we know, that we may be more comfortable with, or may confuse us, or elude us or throw us off from what's actually happening? So just an interesting theory that I had pertaining to alien abduction and a connection with possibly ghost, or what we know as ghost.